Welcome to the Grown Up Table. My name is Grant Swartzwelder, and I really appreciate you coming for a very special guest and a very special topic. Let's set the table right off the top. I'm from Texas A&M, and I'm used to walking down the streets and everyone saying howdy. Now, in the last few years, no longer are people saying hi or even smiling at you. It really has changed. I've got a special guest today to talk about why that is. You look at some of the reasons, and is it political dissension? Is it fear? Is it urbanization? There's a variety of reasons that cause that. What's the ramifications of that? Well, you've got the issues that when people don't speak to you, when they don't show a friendliness, a hospitality to you, I think it can affect your happiness as an individual and whether you feel lonely or not. So there's a lot of emotional and psychological benefits of being friendly, of saying hello, and being received back the same way. Today, to talk about all this, I'm so fortunate to have Dr. Matthew Housson, a longtime friend, CEO, founder of the Housson Center, has his PhD from the University of Texas Southwestern, has his own center that's focused on the emotional and behavioral kind of uh,
Functioning of children.
functioning of children and of families. There you go. Thank you,
Yeah,
Matthew.
rolled right off the tongue. That was
There you
perfect.
go. But so he is so perfect for this. One of the happiest, most positive people I know. In addition to that, so Matthew, let me just start off. What's going on here? Why am I what I'm seeing? Is that true, or what are you seeing?
Absolutely, but I think your fundamental error is Texas A&M. I'm a Longhorn,
Yes.
and we say hook 'em.
Yeah.
And if you would start with hook 'em, Grant, you'd be in a lot better position.
See, I actually was going to suggest that the problem you might not be happy because of the football game that just had and how unhappy you might
Yeah.
be. So, but it looks like you've
Yeah,
overcome
we're okay.
with that
You know,
optimism that you
yeah.
have as a Longhorn.
Opening
But thank you
season.
for bringing that. I'm usually the one to take shots at the guest, and so this is throwing me off to have shots taken at me.
I think it's a really good topic, and thank you so much for, inviting me. I've known Grant and Jody for years and years and years, and so it was really fun to hear from you about a really interesting topic I've thought about. I grew up in Eastland, Texas, to a high school football, 49 people in my graduating class, and I went from Eastland High School, the Mavericks, to UT Austin, the Longhorns, and it's culture shock. So I remember one of my first days, I worked at a place called Scottish Rite Dormitory, and a guy said to me, "Boy, where are you from?" So I still have a little bit of my accent, but it does still strike me like you that people don't make eye contact. One of my kids really laugh at me because I still wave at people
Mhm.
when I'm driving down the road. And it's become a game with us where I ask them to count the number of people that wave back in Dallas versus when we're back at Eastland or Ranger, where we have a place out there, and it's become a fun joke for us.
There's statistics that say that only 21% will say hi back.
Is that right? I didn't
So
know that.
79% will not. So I don't know if that's what you've seen.
Yeah, no, I mean that's probably matches our number. I think for me it's just this continuum in human relationships of separateness versus connectedness. And I think that some of the reasons that you mentioned, and then really COVID, has thrown us all for a loop, and we're probably all talking about the residual of COVID, but this is a residual where I think people really became fearful of each other because people were potentially life threatening to us, right? If they got close. Initially, we didn't know how COVID was spread. So if you touch me, if you breathe on me, you're going to spread this lethal disease. And there's residual from that. And so I think that you have on one dimension the idea of disconnection. And then the other dimension that's related to it is anxiety. I mean, when we think about anxiety and how people respond, the most common defense mechanism for people who are anxious is avoidance. And
Yep.
so when we're avoiding it, we're, our anxiety is exacerbated because the times that you do slow down and say hello, engage in a connection with someone, anxiety's gone. And then there's meaning and purpose in that person. At this point, we're avoiding those opportunities.
And it almost seems self-fulfilling because if you're afraid of speaking and then but you do reach out and then they don't respond back,
Yeah.
then that cements your thought that you shouldn't say hello.
Exactly. Yeah, it kinda reinforces you for not doing so the next time.
You mentioned COVID. Thinking about it, I thought of COVID, I thought of AI and
Mm,
kind of all the distress associated. And then over the last several years, and really 6, 8 years, all the political uh, distrust and kind of almost hatred between the parties. And
yeah.
so there seems to be a general disdain for other individuals and what they might stand for.
Yeah, and I told my kids, 2 of them are in college, one in grad school, one in undergrad, and I said, "Guys, when you're in college, your most important job is to figure out how to communicate and get along with people who think differently from you, because there's a real failure in understanding another person's perspective, and things have become, like you said, so acrimonious that we don't have the opportunity to really understand why that person has that worldview." And we avoid that person because they irritate us because their viewpoints are so, different from our own.
But that's in conversations back and forth.
Yeah.
I'm talking about just walking down a
Yeah.
street and people avoiding. I do think there's a link there, but it's amazing because you're not having to interact with them. You're
Sure.
just walking by and you can wave or
Right.
say hi, but it seems like it's gone to that point.
Yeah, no, I think so, and I think it's interesting just as a observer of behavior, whether you're trained or not, to watch the defense mechanisms people use. Our phones have just been a perfect, end quote, perfect defense mechanism through which we can avoid contact. I notice when I get on an elevator, I notice, when I've been in Chicago or New York, just how people are so busy in those situations that they can justify the missed opportunities for connection. And so where I grew up, um, you would get pretty direct feedback as a kid growing up to look the person in the eye, have the right handshake. I remember one time my son shook a rancher that I knew's hand, and he said, "Let's do that again, young man. That's not how you shake someone's hand." And he never did it again.
Well, so, and your focus with the Housing Center is for younger folks.
Hmm.
Do you think that they're not being trained to have that outreach or be that forward? Some of it's manners, but then some of it is also just trusting that there will be a receipt of your friendliness.
Yeah, I think it's training, and I think schools have done a really good job this year getting cell phones out of the classroom. I think that I think universally in Texas, I mean, there's a state law against it, and a lot of the private schools preceded the state schools, the public schools, in getting phones out of the classroom, just because children can naturally go on their phone. We all can go on our phone and go to the world that we want to be in, but that's not the social world. So we're absolutely seeing significant deficits in kids with social skills deficits. And
Right.
so as a clinician, the question has become, is this are these rising rates in autism due to people who have different social skills connecting, having babies? So you have the gene pool is got a weaker set of genes as it relates to social
Interesting.
ability? Or is it that there's just we're not teaching social skills? Social skills are like athletic skills, like reading skills. You practice them, they get better. We can teach people who have autism social skills. And so it is 100% the case that in the last 5 years, we've seen a significant decrease in the emphasis on social connection. And I think in large part it's due to technology.
And so with the advent of AI,
Mhm.
that'll just extrapolate that.
It's worse. Yeah.
So it's
And I even have kids come in and say, "Dr. Howson, I asked AI how to relate to other people." Right? So they know it's a difference. I mean, you have individuals who we're human beings. I mean, part of what separates us from other animals is our emotions and our social skills.
mhm.
And so there's always the desire for social connection. It's just uncomfortable when you don't have the skills. And so I have now 5 speech language therapists that work with me who are specialists in social skills. It's called pragmatic language is the social use of language, and we're doing direct teaching and social
Mm.
skills are called pragmatic language social groups.
Not to get off on a tangent here, but shouldn't that be taught at the family and the home?
Absolutely. I mean, we're trying
And
to
try to
piggyback and work
extrapolate
with
some
the
of that.
families and
Yeah,
help the parents.
that's a whole nother podcast, it
Yeah,
sounds like,
it's a
so
whole
we'll,
nother podcast. But I think on the podcast of the daily greetings, it's the parent's responsibility to teach children that when you walk in the room, you look at each person in the eye and you greet them and you say hello. That's a
yeah,
direct social skill. People don't teach that anymore.
yeah.
It's uncomfortable for some of our children, but so is reading's uncomfortable. So is brushing your teeth uncomfortable.
Until you do it enough times that it
It
becomes
becomes
second
automatic.
nature.
Yeah.
One of the other issues I wonder about on all of this is kind of the trust, and do you trust the person to respond in a certain way?
Yeah.
And there was a statistic that in the late 70s, early 80s, 42% trusted the other person.
Mm,
Now in 2010, it was like below 30%. And I would say it's probably a lot lower than that now.
yeah.
And so if you don't trust the other person to behave in a certain way, again, you find yourself in a defensive crouch in
Yes.
trying to talk.
I think
How do
it's
you
really
fight through that?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and I think, part of getting older is you kind of hopefully get a little bit of wisdom, and one of the
You get
things
wisdom, or do you get more cynical and more crusty? Well,
I don't know, Grant.
okay,
Um,
I get one, you get the other, so
yeah, what do I get? I would say I get a little more forgiving, right? And so what I mean by that is if I smile and greet someone on the street that I don't know, I walked in and there was a lady sitting in the waiting room and I smiled and greeted her and she responded to me and that felt good. But had she not, I would have said, not what's wrong with me, because I did the right thing.
yeah.
It's appropriate for me to walk into a room where there's just one person, acknowledge her, make eye contact, and say hello. Had she not, I would have said, she's got something going on with her. There's something going on in her life,
But that's on her.
but it's not about me. And so I think a lot of times we over personalize other people's behavior rather than taking, the ability to either use empathy or just understanding of maybe something else is going on with them. So I think one of the lessons is don't take it personally if someone doesn't do the right thing back to you. Just do the right thing yourself.
You know, same but different is I've heard a story where people give to the homeless folks, and they're like, "Well, they might be using that to buy drugs or do whatever."
Yeah.
And the point this person made is that's not the point. The point is that you gave.
Yeah.
And so what you're describing is having the grace for them, and how they take it is up to them.
Well, and I think, just to carry that forward, I mean, it's a gift to greet somebody. I mean, that's a generous thing to do.
Mhm.
And a lot of times when we think about something that's generous, we think, what does it cost us? This is nothing. There's no cost to connect to somebody. And so hopefully that lady that I said hi to, she felt nice that she was acknowledged as a person. Because I think to not be acknowledged as a person um, just starts a domino effect of negative emotions. That person may respond with, you know, how rude for that guy to walk in. She may feel anger towards me. I may trigger something in her that was indicative of a time in her life. And we're going way far with this,
Sure.
but it may trigger something in her that brings up, anger. It may trigger anxiety. Is this a safe person for me to be in the waiting room with? So you don't know what person's background is, but if you lead with positivity and acknowledgement, your dominoes go the other direction.
Yeah. There is kind of a divide on the road. The part you talked about with, the the individual can have experience a kind of a loneliness or an isolation, but then on by not saying hi or not responding. But then on the other side is also what it can do for you as an individual, and that's where you were going,
The
where
connection.
it makes you a happier person because you've kind of provided some joy out to someone else. That I think the statistic that for every happy friend you have, your happiness goes up 9%.
Yeah.
And so it's the old happiness breeds happiness.
Exactly.
And so the speaking, the saying hello is a step in that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we think about in psychology, there's this concept of hassles versus uplifts, right? A hassle is a negative thing that happens to you, something that pushes you down. An uplift is something that pushes you up. So a greeting can be an uplift, right? Someone giving you something free is an uplift. No matter how old you are, free is nice. It's free to give someone an acknowledgement, a greeting, a wave, an eye contact, a hey, how are you?
So you're suggesting when I go down the street and I say hello and they don't say hello back, that I shouldn't yell back hello louder. I should just
You
accept it.
can, right? But that
With all your training, you're suggesting that
well, but I
means I'm flawed, or which
well, that's a whole different
okay,
conversation,
well
Grant. No, I'm
that's
joking.
true.
I don't think you're flawed. I think that you're over personalizing.
Okay.
And I think that you say, it's like praying for someone, right? I'm going to pray for you. And then them saying to you, well, I don't want your prayer. Well, you can say, well, I'm still going to pray for you
Hmm.
or whatever. It's a gift. A gift is something a gift should be something you give freely. And I think a greeting should be a gift.
Can I also another potential question is, can I rationalize it by saying they're just deaf and didn't hear me?
Those are defense mechanisms, and
Okay.
you pick the one that works best for you.
Okay.
So if it's they're deaf, they're a jerk, they're having a bad day, whatever it is, so that your uplift doesn't become the uplift you're trying to give doesn't become your hassle.
Okay. Well, that
Because I think it circumvents the whole purpose of it.
yeah. So how do we change this as a society? One step at a time, I guess.
Yeah.
But and I know there's a conta- contagious type feature of this, but
Yeah.
but it seems like we've gone so far the other way into an antisocial mode.
Yeah.
Uh, do you have a little dust that you can spread out, or
Yeah. I wish I
how
had
does that
fairy
work?
dust for positivity and
Friendliness and all.
I think it's just it's our kids. I mean, I think it's really if every person who heard this podcast or every person who experienced what you experienced that kind of generated the idea for the podcast said to our kids, hey, as a family, we value connection and um, connection can start with a stranger. I do a podcast with Dr. Early Dennison, who's a pediatrician, and Dr. Andy Stoker, who's a pastor. And it's called Parenting for the Present. One of the things we talk about a lot in our podcast is the importance of the family coming together as a table, and the parents of the family are the CEOs of the family, and they kind of say, well, what's the vision for our family? What's important to our family? And I think that if we want to address the problem that you raised, is we value treating other people with kindness and respect. So we say it's respectful when you're in the elevator to look at the people in the elevator and say, how are you? Doesn't have to go any further than that. But if you want to say, oh, that's a cool Longhorn shirt, what'd you think of the game?
There you go.
Then you
Always
have the
bring it back to the
opportunity for
Longhorns.
connection.
That's good.
Exactly. Some of our best friends we met when we were in Seaside at a swimming pool. We just started talking. And had we, you know, read our books or read our phones and not acknowledged people who were sitting right next to us in chairs, they're from Huntsville, Alabama,
Hmm.
we would have never gotten the friendship. And so I think we can talk to our kids about the the value and also the likelihood that something good may come from it.
Well, and that brings up a point that I wasn't planning on bringing up, but taking a risk.
Exactly.
And you see that with kids, people all the time taking a risk on a job, on whatever. But this is the most basic form of just taking one step to meeting someone midway or exposing yourself just a little bit and having that risk and what the return could be is pretty significant.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's such a low cost risk. It's like someone buying you a lottery ticket and your risk is scratching it,
Yeah.
right? There's going to be nothing there, or you may get something in return. But if you don't scratch it, you're never going to win the relationship.
And I look at that as like, what's the downside? And the downside is just walking on down the road, no one knowing that you got, quote, rejected
Yeah.
because no one was ever there to see you or
Yeah.
at the pool or whatever. And so
And then
it's,
even reframing it as rejection to, you know, maybe that at least made that person feel better. Or maybe that person at least wondered, well, why would that guy say hi to me?
yeah. When there's so many other ways besides just saying hello or waving, it could be a simple nod,
Yeah.
a smile, uh, very easy ways to exert the same type of positive influence.
Yeah. And you think, if you think about it, when people say, oh, I visited this place or this place, one of the, I've been to Italy or I went to Spain or I went to Indiana. One of the first things that people use to describe a place is the people. The people are so friendly,
Yep.
right? And so I think as, human beings, um, being treated kindly is really valuable. And so whether it's a wave or a fist bump or a head nod or a how are you, that it's a nice thing to give to
Mhm.
other people. So I think, if you blow it out culturally, I think what's become is people have become so self-centered
Mhm.
that there is a failure to acknowledge the other. And so we get into these very insular groups who think the same way, and then you get these divisions that lead to disconnection. And when there is that degree of, you know, similarity of thought, you lose diversity of opinion, which leads to growth.
Very good. Dr. Housen, I knew this would be good. I always enjoy talking to you, and thank you very much. Any closing thought, or
No,
have
it's
you
great to be
have
with
you
you.
did
I think we could talk about this and a whole lot of other things. So
well,
I enjoyed the time.
maybe we'll have a podcast just again talking about me as a flawed individual and let you psychoanalyze me in front of everyone. And
Yeah, that would be fun.
that would be
We'll find a
that would be
couch in here and we'll just go at it.
that well, except I'd fall asleep. So it's thank you, Matthew. Really
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
My pleasure. It's good to see you.
Here at the end of the podcast, let's clear the table. And really, this topic is one of the bases for this podcast, conversations on life and character, because at the core of the character is having individuals that care for others and care for themselves. And one of the most basic parts of that is just being able to say hello, reaching out to someone, and trying to show a little care to them. But from that, you get a lot of benefit. You get to have the happiness that you have at least tried to reach out, and you have tried to really care for your fellow person, and you'll get a lot of benefit from that. Thanks for joining us at the Grown Up Table, and look forward to seeing you again. Thanks.